Hey there, folks. Warm welcome to our channel where we love to delve into intriguing topics and share the insightful deets with y'all. Today, let's have a cozy chat about something that's been around far longer than most of us realize: squatting. Yeah, that's right. The act of filling up deserted or unused buildings or patches of land without any legal thumbs up. Before y'all start to scrunch your brows, let's embark on a little history journey to understand how this all began. You probably didn't know, but squatting has its roots very deep in history. It wasn't born just yesterday. Its historical antecedents are spotted even in olden Europe, predominantly post-World War III, where displaced populations occupied derelict buildings or military bases just trying to find a roof above their heads. This leads us to the very essence of squatting: socioeconomic conditions. The majority of squatting episodes across timeline you'll see arose out of necessity, stark poverty, or homelessness triggered by a myriad of social or economic factors. Picture industrial revolution, economic recessions, war aftermaths, and you see a familiar pattern emerging. Squatting, in most cases, has been a byproduct of systemic failures and hardships. Let's check in on a few early examples to illustrate this. The diggers of 17th century England was an intriguing example. They were a group of folks who, during the time of the Little Ice Age and the English Civil War, declared unused land to be public property and began to squat on it. Talk about being rights-wise and revolting against the enclosure of common land. Their story, although centuries old, reflects upon a reality that is still relevant. When systems fail, people find alternative routes to survive. So there you have it, folks. A quick trip down history lane exploring the origins and causes of squatting. Next time you pass by an empty building or a bare piece of land, you might look at it just a little bit differently. Symbolic residue from our shared socioeconomic past, don't you think? Squatting isn't just a thing for crusty punk and audacious artists. Some pretty big names have dipped their toes into this rebellious act. A prime example is the legendary Jimi Hendrix. He famously squatted in part of the Ringo Starr-owned Montague Square flat, giving London some serious guitar magic. Then there's the iconic squatting incident that got everyone talking. In the late 70s to 80s, the Lower East Side of Manhattan, usually referred to as Alphabet City, was a veritable squatting village. The Tompkins Square Park riot of 1988 was a confrontation between police and squatters that you'd think was straight out of a movie. Quite the event, huh? Mind you, not all stories of squatting end in guitars or riots. They can also end up in the dull but important area of courts and laws. Take the curious case of Cheryl Roberts in the UK, for instance. Her squatting in a Soane Million house in London led to the introduction of a new law in 2012 making residential squatting a criminal offense. That's influence for you. Sidle over to the US and the legal scene isn't any less interesting. You might have heard of adverse possessions. Fancy term, right? Basically, if you manage to squat a property for a certain period without the real owner nudging you and meet a few legal requirements, the property can actually become yours. High risk, high reward. Now, I'm not advocating you go buy a can of spray paint and start your squatting career, but it's pretty fascinating to think how this act of rebellion intersects with the world of celebrities, landmark incidents, and tricky legal pathways. Handy, fun fact fodder for your next dinner party, don't you reckon? Oh boy. Let's dive right into the meaty business of squatting communities. There's a whole doodad of communities out there occupying unused or abandoned buildings without the thumbs up from the big legal guys. We bit naughty, but hey, they're making use of empty spaces, right? In some places, these communities have really put down roots. Think about it. They're just like your typical neighborhoods, but in buildings that were just collecting dust before. Spain's especially noteworthy for this. They relish in art, music, and even run free workshops on various topics. Cool. Wants to make you go there, doesn't it? Talking about squatting and not mentioning laws would be like forgetting the hot sauce in your spicy buffalo wings, a big no-no. So it turns out laws on squatting are as varied as the shoes in your closet. In England and some parts of the US, it could land you with criminal charges. Bummer, right? But move over to the Netherlands, and it's quite the other way around. Squatting is totally okay if a building's been empty for a year. Even codified into law. Go figure. And then we're bringing in the Justice League, the courts. because, of course, squatting ain't a topic you just sweep under the rug. It's been the heart of numerous legal battles and sparked some landmark decisions. Check out the case of Maria, when folks in Amsterdam argued they were acting out of necessity by squatting due to the city's housing crisis, and they won.
Court said that eviction would infringe on their right to private life.
How about that for a superhero ending? But as with any good story, there's always a flip side. These legal wins are not always an everyday thing. So with squatting, it's always a bit of a patchwork quilt. It might get you a place to hang your hat or a date with the judge. All depends on where you decide to roll out your sleeping bag. Public opinion on squatting, right? It's a real mixed bag, mate. Once upon a time, people saw squatters as Robin Hood types, ya know?
Stepping in and making use of something that was just lying idle, abandoned buildings, not serving anyone.
There was a sort of admiration for the rebellion of it all. These days, people's views have shifted a bit. The struggling artist image has been replaced with that of opportunistic lawbreakers. What the media says about squatters really stirs the pot, doesn't it? Newspapers, telly, the lot, they tend to paint squatters in a pretty dim light. They're usually portrayed as rowdy, disrespectful bunch taking over neighborhoods and turning them upside down. Some reality shows even demonize them. It's not all entirely negative though. There are smaller outlets, especially on the internet, where squatters are seen as desperate folks on the edge trying to survive in hard times. Now, here's the real kicker. Squatting has made quite a few waves in urban development and housing policy circles. Empty buildings don't do anyone any good, do they? Economically, it's a waste. Squatter stepping in has pushed some cities to rethink about their strategies, particularly with housing policies. Some folks reckon it's better to make use of these empty spaces. Maybe turn them into social housing or low-cost rentals. But on the flip side, there's a worry that more squatting might discourage property developers who wants to pour money into building something that might just get occupied without any returns. It's clear to see, mate, that squatting is a complex issue. While some view it as a symptom of broader societal problems, others see it as a problem itself. Either way, it's an issue that seriously impacts how our cities grow and develop. And at the end of the day, the dialogues around squatting are really dialogues around affordable housing, homelessness, and urban development. The challenge is finding a way to balance the needs of everyone involved. Hey there, let's dive right into a talk about squatting, this whole hullabaloo of folks moving into empty, abandoned places without any official okay from the authorities. Now, the thing is, not everyone's happy about it. You've got those property owners, for instance, who sternly believe they're getting played, their space exploited. The hot air gets even thicker when eviction time rolls around. And believe me, it ain't a field day when the sheriffs step in to shoo off the squatters. It can get as messy as a grilled cheese sandwich without any cheese. Now, do you reckon that moving into any old place without a thought would be all unicorns and rainbows? Nah, mate, it isn't. There's a fair bit of grunt work and squabbles that can quickly turn into a hornet's nest. Within these squatting communities, grievous social problems sneak up as well. Overcrowded living conditions, disputes about who's doing what, or even bringing in the next meal. It isn't exactly a fancy hipster commune. Then there's the legal twist in the plot. The gov's firm on this, no play without pay. Colloquially speaking, you don't legally belong there, and it's a slippery slope to sliding into criminal activities. You'd be surprised how often squatting can be a stone's throw away from things like theft, vandalism, and disturbing the peace.
Speaking of the law, squatting is in murky waters.
Now, some might argue it's not exactly a crime, but more of a civil matter. That's like saying your dog ate your neighbor's prized roses, but it's not a biggie because, hey, it's your dog, not you. Let's just say it's frowned upon with enough legal implications to make you wish you'd slept in a park instead. So, in essence, we've got a matter muddled in exploitation, riddled with internal issues and packing enough legal baggage to ruin your summer vacation. Squatting's no walk in the park, no sorry. It's complicated and messy and at times downright unlawful. Just a typical Tuesday, eh? So, pals, let's dive into the hot topic of squatting. In the current scene, squatting isn't that thing you do at the gym. No, we're talking about those badass folks who set up shop in deserted buildings or unused bits of land without getting the legal thumbs up. So to say this act has transformed, re-emerging with fresh nuances in today's context. Take, for instance, the numerous art communities who've opted out of splashing absurd wads of cash on rent and have squatted abandoned warehouses. They've created vibrant cultural hubs, breathing life into forgotten spaces. But don't think it's all smooth sailing. Lawmakers have been scribbling up a storm. A few noteworthy adjustments have blown across the legal landscape, impacting squatters. The UK tossed a spanner in the works with the 2012 law making residential squatting a crime. Yep, you heard it right. It's now illegal to squat in residential buildings over there. So we're waving goodbye to the good old days of squatters' rights, and trust me, it's kicked up quite the fuss. Now let's compare this with the housing crisis that's happening with fewer affordable homes available. We've seen a spike in folks saying, heck it, and squatting. Some see it as the last resort, basic shelter versus sleeping rough. The issue of homeless citizens choosing abandoned, overlooked spaces over the streets is as controversial as it is sad. It boils down to a basic human right, shelter, and how society and authorities are addressing it or perhaps not addressing it. But hey, that's enough chin wagging for now. If this video struck a chord with you, go ahead and smack that like button, and why not subscribe while you're at it? You wouldn't want to miss out on future juicy chats like this, would ya? So stay tuned, all right? Stay woke, amigos.